Let me tell you a powerful story that happened a long time ago in a great city called Susa, which was like our capital city. This story is about a beautiful young woman named Hadassah, though most people called her Esther. Esther had no father or mother, so her uncle, Mordecai, who was like a father to her, raised her. Mordecai was a good man who worked at the gate of the king's palace. One day, King Ahasuerus became angry with his first wife, Queen Vashti, because she refused to obey his command. So the king declared that a new wife should be found for him. Beautiful young women from all over the kingdom were gathered at the king's palace. They had to go through a year-long regimen of beauty treatments, anointing themselves with fragrant oils before they could see the king. Esther was among them, and Mordecai told her not to reveal to anyone her nationality. She listened to her uncle and remained humble and gentle. When the chief attendant for the girls saw Esther, she knew she was different and gave her special treatment. When King Ahasuerus finally saw Esther, he fell in love with her instantly. He chose her to be his new queen and threw a grand banquet to celebrate her. But Esther still did not reveal her nationality, just as Mordecai had instructed. As all this was happening, a wicked man named Haman, the king's chief advisor, was gaining power in the palace. Haman was so proud that he demanded everyone bow down to him, but Mordecai refused. He would tell Haman, "I will not bow to you. I bow only to God." This infuriated Haman. He then began to plot the destruction of Mordecai and all his people in the entire kingdom, all because of one man who refused to bow to him. Haman went to King Ahasuerus and told him, "Your Majesty, there is a certain group of people in your kingdom who do not follow your laws. They are different. Let's just take them out, all of them." Haman did not tell the king that he was talking about Mordecai and his people. The king agreed and gave Haman the royal signet ring to seal the plan for their execution. When Mordecai heard the terrible news, he tore his clothes and began to weep and wail at the palace gate. The news reached Queen Esther, and she sent a message to ask him what was wrong. Mordecai told her everything. He told her about Haman's plan to destroy all their people, including her. Mordecai sent a powerful message to Esther, saying, "Go to the king and plead with him for your people." Esther was afraid. She sent a message back to Mordecai saying, "Sir, anyone who approaches the king without an invitation faces punishment. It has been 30 days since the king last called for me." Mordecai then sent back a message that carried serious weight. "My sister, do not think that because you are in the palace, you will escape. Who knows, perhaps you have come to this position for such a time as this to save your people." Mordecai's words struck Esther deeply. She found her courage. She told him, "Go and gather all our people in Susa and have them fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, day and night. My attendants and I will do the same. After that, I will go to the king. If I perish, I perish." After 3 days, Esther put on her royal robes, looking beautiful and radiant, and stood in the inner court of the king's palace. When King Ahasuerus saw her, his heart softened. He extended his golden scepter to her, which was a sign that she was safe. Esther then invited the king and Haman to a small banquet she was planning. The king agreed, but at the banquet, Esther did not state her request. She simply invited them to another banquet the next day. Haman left feeling happy and proud that the queen had even invited him to a private. That night, the king could not sleep. He asked his servants to bring the official records of his reign and read them to him. As they read, they came to the part that told of how Mordecai had saved the king from assassins, but had never been rewarded. The king then asked Haman, "What should be done for a man whom the king delights to honor?" Haman, thinking the king was talking about him, said, "Have the man dressed in the king's own robes and placed on the king's horse, and let a high-ranking official lead him through the city, shouting, 'This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor.'" The king then shocked him by saying, "Go and do all of those things for Mordecai." The next day, at the second banquet, the king again asked Esther what she wanted. With a strong voice, Esther said, "Your Majesty, if you are pleased with me, and if you have love for me, I beg you, spare my life and the lives of my people. We have been sold to be destroyed, to be completely wiped from this land." The king was furious and asked who would dare to do such a thing. Esther pointed to Haman and said, "This wicked man, Haman." King Ahasuerus was enraged and ordered that Haman be hanged on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. The king then gave Mordecai the ring he had taken from Haman and made him his new chief advisor. Esther and Mordecai wrote a letter to all the Jews in the kingdom, giving them the right to defend themselves. The Jews were victorious over their enemies and celebrated with great joy. But the story did not end with the hanging of Haman or the victory of the Mordecai's people. A great evil had been defeated, but the peace that followed had to be built piece by piece with wisdom and care. With Mordecai as the new chief advisor, the kingdom of King Ahasuerus entered an era of justice and prosperity. Where Haman had ruled with pride and greed, Mordecai governed with humility and fairness. He remembered his days at the palace gate, and he made sure that the voices of the common people were heard. The laws he helped the king enact were for the good of all, not just a favored few. The kingdom flourished, trade routes became safer, and the treasury grew, not from extortion but from honest commerce. Queen Esther's role also changed. She was no longer just the queen who had won the king's heart with her beauty, but the queen who had saved a nation with her courage. King Ahasuerus now saw her not only as his beloved wife, but as his most trusted counselor. He had been deceived once by a wicked advisor, and he was determined not to let it happen again. He would often seek Esther's opinion on matters of state, valuing her insight and her deep sense of compassion. Together, she and Mordecai became a powerful force for good in the palace. However, the shadow of Haman lingered. Many of his allies and supporters remained in the court, resentful of Mordecai's rise to power. They could not openly challenge him, for he had the king's unwavering favor, so they resorted to whispers and rumors. They murmured that Mordecai was using his position to enrich only his own people, the Jews. They claimed he was secretly plotting to give them power over the rest of the kingdom. These whispers eventually reached the king's ears. One evening, a group of nobles, old friends of Haman, came before Ahasuerus. "Your Majesty," their spokesman said, "we are loyal to you, but we are concerned. Your chief advisor, Mordecai, shows great favor to his people. Is it wise to place so much trust in a man whose loyalty might be to his tribe before his king?" The king, remembering how easily he had been swayed by Haman's lies, did not grow angry. Instead, he grew quiet and thoughtful. That night, he went to Queen Esther's chambers. "Esther," he said, "some say Mordecai is using his power for his own people. They question his loyalty. Tell me what you think, for your wisdom is a light to me." Esther did not panic or become defensive. She had learned that true strength was not in a loud voice but in quiet truth. She replied calmly, "My king, do not listen to their words. Look instead at the kingdom. Are the roads not safer? Is the treasury not fuller? Are your subjects not more content than they were under Haman? Mordecai's loyalty is to justice, and because he is just, the entire kingdom prospers. His people are safe, yes, but so are all the other people under your rule. A rising tide lifts all boats, my king. A just ruler benefits everyone." The king saw the wisdom in her words. The next day, he called for the official records to be brought before him again. He reviewed the accounts of trade, the tax revenues from every province, and the reports from his governors. The evidence was undeniable. The entire kingdom was thriving under Mordecai's administration. He then summoned the nobles who had accused Mordecai. "You came to me with whispers of disloyalty," the king said, his voice firm as stone. "I have looked at the facts. I see a kingdom at peace and a people who are prospering. Your words are born of jealousy, not loyalty. You have tried to plant seeds of doubt, just as Haman did. I will not let that poison take root in my court again." The nobles were stripped of their positions and sent away from the palace in disgrace. This story teaches us that no matter how difficult things get or how afraid you might be, God always has a plan. He might place you in a certain position in a certain place for a reason. And as Mordecai told Esther, who knows, perhaps it was for such a time as this that God put you in that position to save your people. We've seen the heroes of the Bible triumph over adversity, but what happens when darkness prevails? In our next video, we confront a story, The Return, that will send chills down your spine. A warning from the past, a glimpse into the consequences of our choices. Are we doomed to repeat the mistakes of those who came before us? Prepare to face the shadows and discover the true cost of greed. Get ready.